Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
All right, Rob Browne here with you on this Tuesday edition of Sidelines. Getting closer to college football start. I think by my calculations, that is 264 hours away, if anybody's counting, and I know a couple of people out there are. But we will have that game Thursday night. Well, Saturday, we got Vanderbilt hosting Hawaii. Then August 31st, Florida travels to Utah, the land of Jim Swarthout. That will be a very difficult game. Last year, Florida had to play a full 60 for sure to get that win at home. And that's kind of, I would say, that the highlight of the year for Florida. And then they struggled the rest of the season and then had so many players that quit on the team that didn't play in the bowl game. Don't give me that opt-out crap, okay? You either are there or you have quit. Okay? Fans can get hurt driving to the damn games. You can get in a car wreck. You can roll your ankle, get drunk, fall off the curb. A lot of things can happen to you. Okay? I think we need to take that narrative and shame these players that are quitting on their teams. That was acceptable during the virus lockdowns to some people, but not on this show, not to me. And I think what we've allowed to happen is, kids will come in and have a good freshman year. Sophomore year, they kind of just are there. People call it a sophomore slump or whatever. I don't really buy that. But what I do think is their junior year, they'll have some good games early on, and then the agents get to them and tell them to slow it down. I don't like that. You're in college. You're on scholarship. You owe it to your teammates, to that university, to give 110%. And to think anything less than that is absurd. And I mean, that's what we got to be very, very careful of. It's all great. I'm glad these guys dreaming of an NFL career. But when you're in college, you ought to be playing your tail off. So we got a lot happening. Ben Troupe be joining us here in just a moment. And I'm anxious to talk to him, what he thinks about Graham Mertz. Graham Mertz has like 26 starts at Wisconsin. They play good football at Wisconsin. Don't think that they don't. We'll also talk with, in the second segment, Will Gunter out of Columbia, South Carolina, ESPN 107.5, The Game. Hour number 2, we will be hearing We'll be hearing from, I'm looking on here. Whoa. Just a second here. Doug Dean will be checking in from Birmingham, the AU Dose. And in the fourth segment, Yancy Porter, Rebel Yell Hotline. Okay. So lots to cover, lots to go with. And I guess the number one thing I'm looking at is there's still 3 teams, I think, Ole Miss and Missouri, Texas A&M, have not named a quarterback, a starter yet. I think most people think Connor Wigman is going to be the guy at Texas A&M. Based on what Rodney Orr and Gary Harris are telling us, Jalen Milroe looks like he might be the starter in the first game, but it may take Alabama 3 or 4 games to determine who the starter is. And Missouri has yet to name a starter. Okay. I don't know who it is going to be, but Ole Miss is another one. That's right. Spencer Sanders, Walker Howard, Jackson Dart. I mean, Jackson Dart was the starter last year. I think what coaches do is they're smart, and they say, hey, we're not going to name a starter until classes start, and make it very difficult for a player to transfer, because how are they going to enroll in school? That's the issue. Okay. I think that's the issue that they have to worry about, is if you've got to have backup quarterbacks. And in the SEC, as physical as this league is, you better have 3. I mean, you know what happens. I mean, guys get beat up. But hey, look, a couple of things I want to get to. The St. Paul Open, the first ever St. Paul Open golf tournament, will be held October 2nd at Chickasaw Country Club. There is a dinner the night before. The teams are all sold out, but there are still opportunities for people if they would like to be a sponsor of a hole or a flag. That is still available. Okay, so keep that in mind. And you call Michael Jordan 901-647-3014. Again, this is to benefit the Archbishop J. Peter Sarton Scholarship Fund. So make sure you get in touch with Michael Jordan. That's coming up October 2nd. And I think also Hewlett and Dunn getting in the new brands every day. They're coming in on the truck. The UPS guy, the FedEx guy, you name it. They're bringing in the new brands every day. I'm going to tell you the Pendleton stuff, the Vask, Hire invented the cowboy boot. I mean, can't make up these names. In some of these brands, Schaefer Outdoors, Danner, Light Boots, and of course, they're the second largest Filson dealer in the Southeast. Hey, follow us on Twitter at @Sidelines_live. Give us a retweet. Like our stuff on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter. I appreciate that very much. We'll return the favor. Got quite a team together. And Ben Troupe is stretching here in the pregame. Should be with us momentarily. Oh, we lost him again. But I think, folks, 4 teams, like I said, Missouri, Ole Miss, Texas A&M, and Alabama, yet to name a starting quarterback. And I want to get into this with Ben. And, Matt Stinchcomb on SEC Network last night, the replay this morning, talking about how in the preseason All-American team, there is only one offensive lineman from the SEC on there and no defensive lineman on the first team. Ben, this is a line of scrimmage league, the SEC, and we're here at on that preseason All-American team. We did have Quinshon Judkins get on there. Are you surprised? I mean, look, preseason All-American team is usually a lot different than the one that comes out in December, isn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, I was gonna say, Rob, it might have started out. That's why preseason stuff is something I never really give a lot of credit to, only because just like I know. Them D-line coaches are using that as fuel, saying, you see that? They ain't even put you on a preseason. Because, coaches in the Southeast, they use anything as fuel. But, just like I know, take a picture of that preseason. That's projection. That's what we hope is going to happen. And watch it at the end of the year. Watch how them guys from Clemson and Georgia and LSU and Auburn and Florida sneak in there. It's too many teams in the Southeast. And not just the SEC and ACC. You talk about the Sun Belt. You talk about different conferences. So yeah, take a picture. Put up on your wall because I get.
Yeah, right. Well, I'm with Ben. The preseason All-American team, it's exciting. But like Matt Stinchcomb, who was an All-American and is in the College Football Hall of Fame, said it's motivation also for your opponents. They're going, wow, that Ben Troupe, he's a preseason All-American. I'm going to be matching up against him in the game Saturday. Okay, so Ben, we kind of lost you there for a second. We had a little bit of R2-D2 from Star Wars where you start kind of freezing up going, get you laughing there. I thought maybe, I'm going to tell you something. Are you like me? We're scheduling a lot of people on these shows, and you're going, what day is it? Is it you sometimes you forget what day it is. I'm going, I know that I texted Ben yesterday because when Mitch Davis of the MitchDavisShow.com was on, we were talking about you. And he goes, I really enjoyed having Ben on. I said, yeah, he's the real deal. He the First Amendment, free speech is alive and well on Sidelines. We don't wear clam diggers. We don't dress like girls. We don't wear clothes like a lot of these guys, Ben, let's be honest, which we always are. Who dresses these guys on ESPN? Man, my mom would whip my arse if I went around wearing clothes like that. I mean, who do they think? I mean, who are they trying to appeal to? Ben, you're the real deal. You grew up in the country. You're an All-American at Florida, played in the NFL. I can't imagine, seeing people. I don't know this where they get these clothes. I just don't get it. Ben, I'll tell you what, the demons are out there today. But these preseason All-American team, I will say Quinshon Judkins from Ole Miss is on there at a park crossing right outside of Montgomery, out on Interstate 85 near Shorter. That's the new town, the new high school that's been built up. But also on the second team is a proud native son of Rockledge, Florida, Rocket Sanders for Arkansas. I mean, this guy is, you're talking, he's big and fast. I mean, I'm not saying he's Marcus Dupree, but Rocket Sanders weighs 244 pounds and runs a 4.45 40. And when you think about Arkansas, folks, and you look at the combination of KJ Jefferson, who doesn't throw very many interceptions, and usually when they are intercepted, it's his own player slips through his hands or they don't catch it. This is one of the most Jaden Daniels, KJ Jefferson. Who's the best dual threat quarterback? I'm going to go with KJ simply because he's bigger and can take more hits, but that's also kind of a negative because last year, KJ, he's 243 pounds. He's bigger than most linebackers in today's defenses. So he'll run over a lot of people, but it takes its toll. He wasn't present for the game against Mississippi State last year. Could have helped in Starkville. The LSU game, they lost 13-10. The Liberty game, you keep going back. If you can convince a quarterback to just take fewer chances and to, not take it and run it, he'll have a much longer career, a much better season. I think, I guess what's happened is we've got quarterbacks bigger than a lot of the linebackers. You look at Harold Perkins for LSU. He's out of New Orleans. He played last year at about 215. He may be 220 this year, 6'1". Okay. KJ's 6'3", 243. Rocket Sanders is 244 pounds. These are big guys. The defenses that we have today, they are put under a lot of stress. Always have been, but like Kevin Steele says, you're lined up. You're lined up sideline to sideline. The offenses are spread so wide. But again, I'm going to say this about the preseason All-American team. Ben, I don't know if you were on there. Cam Newton certainly wasn't in 2010. His name, people called him Cameron before they started just calling him Cam. Long season ahead of us, Ben. But let's head down to Gainesville. Talk about Graham Mertz being named the quarterback. They play good football at Wisconsin. And he's been there a lot of practice, a lot of workouts. How long do you think it'll take him to adjust to the speed of the pass rushes and the defenses in the SEC compared to what he saw week in and week out? He saw some elite talent with Ohio State or Michigan or Penn State, but other than that, not as much.
Yeah, hopefully, by the time I think coming out playing against a team like Utah, it ain't the SEC.
Yeah. Well, Utah is going to be a problem. Kyle Whittingham, in his 18th or 19th year there, has built a great program. It's one of the best programs in college football. They're in Utah now. Utah, BYU, Arizona State, Colorado. Well, Arizona State, yeah. I mean, the big. You think about it: Arizona State, Utah, and Colorado, all into the Big 12. The Big 12 is going to be a very good football conference. It's going to Let's do this. I look around and I think about which conference is the best. SEC preseason, I don't know. I mean, Big 10, Big 12. I think in December the SEC will be viewed a lot more favorably than it is now. There's a lot of good teams, out there. A whole bunch of football to be played. But we're going to try to get Ben on. We're going to take a quick break and be right back and try to get with Ben Troupe. But there's so much happening so fast in college football right now. But that's what we love about the preseason. 264 hours away from the first big weekend. Be right back.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
All right, Rob Browne back here with you. Ben is having a little difficulties. He's traveling today. We'll get him back on here tomorrow. So college football, it's preseason. You pick the team. East, we keep talking about it. Georgia, Carson Beck. I think one of the more telling press conferences or briefings was what Kirby Smart was saying. At Georgia, and this is common sense. And it's easy to think of it this way, but really, day in and day out, Carson Beck, Gunter Stockton, and Brock Vandegrift, Georgia's 3 quarterbacks, are going up against arguably the best, if not one of the best, top 2-3 defenses in the country. So, I mean, why would you think if they're doing well against that, they're not going to do well against everybody else? Don't think that those players are taking it easy on them. So I think Carson Beck, he's big. He's 6'3" or 6'4". He's got a rifle for an arm. They're going to be good. Georgia, right now, you pick them number 1, 2, 3. What's the difference? Ohio State, they're being picked real high. They didn't even pick a quarterback yet. I watched something on ESPN about college football last night, but it was basically all about the Big Ten. It must have been a Big Ten preview or something. Ohio State, they're loaded. They're on that blue chip index. They're on that blue chip index. They rank really, really high. Okay. And I pulled up a photograph, and it's really interesting. And it came out. It was on Twitter yesterday from On3. It's the blue chip index, 2024 blue chip index, and it has at the top. This is committed 4 stars and 5 stars in the class of 2024. Number 1 on that list is Ohio State University. I don't call them the Ohio State University. That is so pretentious. Why do they do that? I'm not doing it. Ohio State, number 1 at 80%. Number 2 is Georgia at 77%. Again, this is the class of 24, which will sign in December and again in February of 24. That'll wrap it up. Number 3 on that list is Auburn at 75%. 75% of the kids Auburn's got committed are 4 or 5 stars. Number 4, how about this crowded house? Florida, 73%. Alabama, number 5, 71%. Texas A&M and Tennessee tied. Wow, it's 68%. Right behind them, LSU and Southern Cal tied at 67%. Then Clemson at 65%, Penn State at 63%, and Oregon at 62%. So, again, wow. Ohio State, Georgia, Auburn, Florida, Alabama, A&M, Tennessee, LSU, Southern Cal, Clemson, Penn State, Oregon. That's impressive. Still got to sign them. I get that. But kids aren't jumping like they used to. I think the real issue here, you'll get your players. That's not going to be. You're not seeing guys flipping. That happens sometimes, but also, you could say, in the case of Auburn, well, hell, Auburn hadn't been recruiting the last 3 years. Not really. Brian Harsin, you heard Philip Marshall say the other day, he's the first coach in 54 years of being a sports writer he's ever met that didn't consider recruiting to be that big of a deal. Well, it is a big deal. And Brian Harsin might be unemployable now. He was at Boise. That's a unique situation. I think in the 7 years he was there, they signed 17 players that were 4-star or higher. Hell, Auburn's got, in this current class, 2 5-stars, 12 4-stars, and 2 3-stars. So he might be unemployable. Again, it's debatable, folks. Send in your comments if you'd like. I'm serious. Is the worst hire of a coach in Auburn history, in the modern era at least. Earl Browne was a nice man, but he went 0-10 in 1950. That led to Shug Jordan coming in. That worked out well. But you think about this. It's either Tony Barbee or it's Brian Harsin as the worst hire in Auburn athletics history. But the $100 million mistake was Auburn's board of trustees. They must have, I don't know what they were doing. Stephen Leith, the 23-month reign of terror. And he selected Alan Green, a very nice guy from Buffalo. That's where schools in the South typically go. Nate Oates, I know he played coached basketball there, but Alan Green wasn't ready for the job, which led to him hiring Brian Harsin. So that's the trio. You better be careful. Your board of trustees, your regents, whatever, and who you hire as an athletic director. But it starts with the president and the provost. They can set an agenda. And, man, if they go down the wrong road, it's like being out in the middle of nowhere running out of gas. You're at the mercy of whoever wants to help you. And as Chevy Chase found out when the old family truckster broke down out in the middle of nowhere, when it came time to pay the guys at the gas station for the repairs, well, how much is it going to be? How much you got? He goes, well, I need to know a price. How much you got, boy? And you don't want to get in that situation. But that is a problem with a lot of schools. And I'm going to tell you, I look around. If you don't have a good AD, you got major, major problems. All right. But talking about recruiting, you look at Kamarion Franklin, big get for Ole Miss over the weekend. And they had to get him. Number 1 player in the state of Mississippi, defensive lineman. The number 2 player in Mississippi is already committed to Florida. Kamarion Franklin out of Lake Cormorant, Mississippi, about 25 miles from Memphis. Ole Miss NIL to the rescue. And you're seeing NIL, you have these collectives, but really most of the money is being raised by a handful of people. Once again, everybody's expecting them to carry the burden. That's why I think that NIL, people will get tired of funding this. I mean, their business, they may have a lot of money and they can do whatever they want to with it, but I still believe that NIL is going to be not as big a deal in a few years. We got to have it. But again, you can't make people give. Hugh Freeze said, if you had 60,000 people giving $100 a piece, that's only $6 million. And what did Tennessee pay Nico Lamaliva? $8 million, something like that. $8 million to come from California. And if he's not starting here soon, wow, what are we going to do at Tennessee? I mean, that $8 million, I'd love to see the contract, if there is a contract. I don't know if it says he has to play to get that money. And is that $8 million spread out $2 million a year over 4 years? Well, we all know if he's really that good, he'll be a 3-year guy. And if he's redshirted this year, I mean, that's a waste. You can't redshirt him because he's still can leave after 3 years. You can leave as a redshirt sophomore. So it's going to be fun to watch that one as we go along. But I think that recruiting, that blue chip number is pretty telling. And if you look at those schools, I'm sure they're spending a chunk of change on NIL. But the portal, as much as I don't like it, you pick the school. Hugh Freeze is benefiting from it. Most people picked Auburn to win 2 or 3 games this year. Things had gotten so bad. And you don't fix that overnight. But you got 40-something players that are new out of either high school recruits or via the portal. So it's going to be completely different. And trying to pick what Auburn's going to do this year is because they got so many new guys, it's going to be difficult. But Arkansas's got 43 new guys via the portal and high school. So it's never going to be easy trying to pick people in the preseason. But when you throw in the portal with all the transients, it's more difficult than I can ever recall. And I think Will would agree with the portal. When you've got 40 or 50% of your roster from 1 year to the next can be brand new. Typically, 25% are gone every year just because they're, out of eligibility or they flunk out or whatever. I don't know. But you look at South Carolina, last year I was watching an interview with Shane Beamer talking about Spencer Rattler, his progress. He goes, I didn't see that all during the season. In those last 4 games, he came to life. I mean, when you think about what a guy like Spencer Rattler can do to a locker room, good or bad, and it looks like right now he's trending upward, and you bring in all these new guys in the portal, it's going to take a few games for people to figure out what every team in the SEC has because of the portal. We've seen them in spring practice to a limited extent. But how big a deal is the portal at South Carolina heading into the 23 season? Year 3 for Shane Beamer.
All right, well, good morning to you. I hope you're doing well. We have actual college football this week, and that's great. Yeah, we've talked about this. I think we're learning more and more about this transfer portal and how players come in and can impact. I mean, last year your Heisman Trophy winner was a transfer quarterback. Now, it helped tremendously, obviously, that he transferred with his coach so he could continue to understand the offensive system. But, I think it's going to be interesting this year, big picture, and I'll get to South Carolina in a second, but big picture, when you see Tyler Buckner trying to transfer down to Alabama and be the starting quarterback, you see Sam Hartman transferring to Notre Dame, Devin Leary going from NC State to Kentucky, Graham Mertz going from Wisconsin to Florida. Now we're seeing more of these quarterbacks, and based on yesterday, or I should say this weekend, I'm lost on my days, to be honest with you. Based on this past weekend, I thought yesterday was Wednesday, just for the record.
We were just talking about that a minute ago. I'm like it's all coming to blur.
I thought yesterday, for it to be a Monday, I thought yesterday was Wednesday. But To go back, Carson Beck is named the starter at Georgia, and now you've got Brock Vandergriff behind him. You've got Gunter Stockton behind him, and right now you have Dylan Raiola coming in as a freshman and the number one player in the country, and obviously number one quarterback. So we're learning about this transfer portal, and as to what you just said, how players can come in and make an impact. For South Carolina, Spencer Rattler, last year for about 9 games, it didn't really work, and there was people that were calling for his benching in October who thought he should be benched. South Carolina has a 4-star quarterback behind him named Luke Doty, and people wanted to see Luke Doty, and they thought it was time to move on. That this little experiment wasn't going to work, and then obviously we know what happened. So it's going to continue to be interesting. And South Carolina is a school that has relied upon the transfer portal. I think you have to do that. I'm really intrigued, to be honest with you, how they are handling recruiting right now, because South Carolina in the last 2 months has missed on some bigger targets that they thought they had. Jalewis Solomon was a guy who they were pretty confident they had until about the last 40 minutes, from what I understand. Something changed pretty drastically, and he ended up going to Auburn. But I think we all know what changed drastically. That's the world of recruiting now.
I can't imagine.
But that's the way it works now. I mean, there's nothing illegal.
Yeah.
It's not illegal anymore. Nobody came in behind closed doors, but they've missed on some targets that they thought they had, and it doesn't look like they have a backup plan. And that might be the plan, is that the backup plan is to go to the transfer portal in the offseason instead of taking a flyer on a high school recruit that might develop in 3 years, might be a redshirt. The timeline for college players now, and I think it actually kind of hurts high school recruiting, because there's kids who get less of a chance. You take your small time offer. South Carolina just picked up a kid this weekend from Alabama Birmingham, and you go to the transfer portal instead of taking a risk on maybe a kid that would develop. There's a young man that just transferred to Florida State from South Carolina, Gilbert Edmond. And he was a guy that Will Muschamp signed at the very end of the class. And Edmond was developing, and he's a backup for Florida State. And I think he's going to be a really good player. It's interesting how the transfer portal has changed development. It's changed recruiting. It's everything now.
It really is. And you talk about like Jalewis Solomon, he's got an older brother on the team at Auburn. That's one reason. But I don't know. And I thought he was going to South Carolina. It looked like he was a 4-star, but out of Schley County. But it's just like Malik Blockton, defensive lineman out of Park Crossing. It was Auburn, Texas. Well, he's got a brother, Marcus Harris, on the team at Auburn that starts. And then, you saw yesterday, Keldrick Falk, who's a freshman at Auburn that enrolled in January, who's going to start 6'6", 288 out of Highland Home on the south side of Montgomery. His younger brother, Jacaleb Falk, was down to Auburn, Alabama, Clemson, Florida, and Georgia. He committed to Auburn yesterday. And so, there's that's the thing. But you're right. NIL is changing. I think that Kamarion Franklin, a lot of people had Auburn pegged to get him, but he's the number one player in Mississippi. And Ole Miss has got a pretty stout NIL collective called the Grove Collective.
Well, what's the one I don't, because South Carolina wasn't involved, but I was familiar with him because Clemson was the 5-star wide receiver that everybody thought was Auburn or Alabama, and he commits to
Cam
Texas
Coleman
A&M.
Out of Phoenix City Central.
Like right down the road, and commits to A&M like almost out of the blue. But that's not. But the point is what South Carolina's doing, I think, is when they miss on these kids, instead of going down and maybe taking a high school recruit that may or may not develop, you go, okay, well, fine, we'll sign 20 high school kids, and then we'll take 10 transfer portal kids, and hopefully we can get them in January. And because they've been through college programs and weight programs and they've played, we can develop it. And that's what South Carolina seems to be doing a little bit of as well.
Good point. And you mentioned like the portal, and you were saying who is the Cam Coleman. That one, and the rumor on that one was crazy, NIL. But what I pointed out to people was Patrick Nix, Bo Nix's father, moved from Pinson Valley, right outside of Birmingham, to be the head coach at Phoenix City Central. Well, who was the chief recruiter for Cam Coleman on the A&M staff. His backup quarterback at Auburn, Damian Craig from Mobile. Damian recruits that area. So he went in there, and A&M, Jimbo Fisher recruited and coached Damian at Auburn. Jimbo knows that area very well. So I always like to look at what's the underlying story. Let's look at South Carolina. Shane Beamer is got to be one of the more likable people. I mean, it's not like we get to spend a lot of time around him, but I just remember his dad, because my brother-in-law played football for Virginia Tech. And they live up in Roanoke. I just know if he's anywhere close to what Frank Beamer is like, and he's got a just high energy personality, I don't see how he's missing on these recruits. I mean, I know the assistants go out and do it. University sells itself, but I don't see how Shane Beamer's not going to be winning at least 7 or 8 games a year and have the occasional 10 or 11. Spurrier did it 3 years in a row. Very few schools in the SEC, other than schools named Alabama and Georgia, have done that, double-digit wins in Florida in the modern era of college football. That's pretty impressive.
Yeah, I mean, it still comes on. One thing Steve Spurrier did is it took him a little while to get it right, but he finally got a staff in place. And that's really what it comes down to. We'll learn more about it this year with the new offensive coordinator who comes from Arkansas, Dow Loggins. It's preseason. It's preseason camp, man. Have you heard of anybody who doesn't have who doesn't have a good preseason camp? I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, you'd interview every school. Vanderbilt's up there going, yeah, I think we got a chance for 9 wins. Great preseason camp. So we're hearing the same thing. But what I love is probably, you always love the big game to open. When Auburn played Oregon a couple of years ago and everything,
yes.
You get that because you find out instantly. There's nothing you can hold back. South Carolina needs to win this game to continue the momentum, to continue to try to get into the state of North Carolina and recruit. So everything that we're wondering about Dow Loggins is really interesting because, okay, is he the offensive coordinator that can take Shane Beamer to the next level? With Steve Spurrier, he finally found himself a defensive coordinator in Ellis Johnson. And when he got Ellis Johnson in, that's when it transitioned from 6 and 7 wins to 9 wins and to 11 wins and so forth and so on. So, I think we're all still watching Shane try to get his staff to where it's perfect because South Carolina had a defensive line coach in Brad Lawing, who unfortunately just age and health passed away. But Brad Lawing is revered, not just around here, but around the country as one of the best defensive line coaches to ever do it. He coached for Saban, went down and coached for Urban Meyer. I think it was Meyer. It might have been Muschamp down there at Florida. I know Brad left here, but, Brad Lawing was one of the best. And I say that because there was a time South Carolina beat out Virginia Tech for a kid named Devin Taylor out of Beaufort, South Carolina. And you talk about Virginia Tech, one of the ways that Virginia Tech did it was getting kids like that and developing them. Bud Foster developing assistant coaches. And Devin Taylor was a 3-star recruit. And he ended up having a great career at South Carolina, went on to have a couple of years in the NFL with the Detroit Lions. DJ Swearinger was a 3-star recruit, went on to be one of the best safeties ever at South Carolina and has had a career in the NFL. So to me, a school like South Carolina, you're going to get some elite recruits and they're stepping forward. That's how you have to win in the SEC. But you better have coaches that can identify that 3-star recruit that's right there on the border and then turn them into being a 4-star recruit, that you coach them up and they become a lot better. And that's how you really win in this league. And you go from 7 wins to 9 to 10 to 11.
You just nailed it. Player development. And if you don't have coaches that can do that, you mentioned Bud Foster. God, he was at Virginia Tech for 30 years or so. Great defensive coordinator. But also what Virginia Tech did that was so special was they made special teams elite. They won so many games. And now you're starting to see that with South Carolina. Shane Beamer is making that a big deal. But again, undeveloped players who are highly rated coming out of high school, they just hang around and never get any better, is a culture killer. It's just, it's clubhouse cancer. It's terrible. And if you're not developing these guys, they'll leave you. And you talk about the high school, typically 133 now. We've added 2 more schools to the D1 ranks. 133 schools, they'll sign a little over 3,300 high school kids in a perfect world. I'd like to see what those numbers are now with the portal. Have you seen any data? Because the transfer portal has been the law of the land since October 15th of 2018. We should have some discernible data, and we can extrapolate some information from there.
Well, it changes as I sit here and look real quick. I mean, it's changed because remember, there's no hard cap on recruits this year. So let me give you a perfect example. Georgia is sitting right now with 26 overall commitments in this particular class. And if you want to downside to the transfer portal and the fact that we no longer cap your recruiting class at 25, what you're getting is Georgia going. They're going back to the Bear Bryant day. I'm going to bring in all the good players. And all I've got to do now, back in that day, there was no scholarship limit. You could have 7, you could have 192 players. But what Georgia's doing now is going, all right, we're going to bring in all the elite talent and you're going to compete and we're going to cut who's not good enough. They're sitting on 26 commitments and they're still chasing guys. They'll end up with 30 commitments. They'll end up with 30 commitments. And then they'll go to the transfer portal in the offseason and go, okay, we got to take this. Georgia could hypothetically, I don't know the number, but Georgia could bring in 35 guys and look at their roster and be like, all right, these 4 stars aren't developing. Let's cut them. So I say that because at 26 commitments, you could see over the next few years more high school players signed to like what Georgia's doing, to take a chance on them and then bring them in, throw them on the practice field. And then when it doesn't work out at the end of the year, go, hey, buddy, sorry, that scholarship's gone.
Well, Alabama was criticized for doing that, processing players out. Everybody does it. Used to be a lot more in the open. Now, rather than a player getting cut or his scholarship not being renewed, they jump ship going to the portal.
Right.
I'm telling you, the portal is where a lot of quitters go to hang out. It's just what it is. And if you look and you read what a lot of high school recruits are saying now, and they'll say, I'm committed for the next 3 or 4 years. This is where I'm going. And I read a 4-star that committed recently to a school said, the portal is where you go if you're not ready and you can't handle it. Now, some guys go to the portal, but if typically it's 1AA, Division II, or Group of 5 going up, and then there's not that much Power 5 to Power 5 movement. I don't see it like that. But guys have always transferred. This is nothing new. It's just the way it's delivered, isn't it? The news.
Well, no, I personally, because I watched it just happen, I think the bad transfer portal stuff is the one where kids, and South Carolina just had 4 of them. South Carolina just had 4 of them that essentially transferred. They were all 4 starters. They all 4 would have been starters this year. One of them I kind of give a break, and that's Jaheim Bell, who just transferred to Florida State because I think they misused him so poorly last year that he just got disgruntled. But look, I know the backstory on him. His was NIL related too. And that's the thing about these kids these days. And that is the transfer portal that I don't like is, hey, I'm a free agent once in my life. I can go after as much money as I want. What schools want to offer me money? And even though it's illegal to technically say that you have this amount of money before any kind of signing is done, that's what's happening. And that's the bad part of it, is where the transfer portal opens up for a kid to basically put it out there to a high school coach or to a handler, and the handler or the high school coach sees these coaches and goes, hey, player X is not really happy with his NIL deal at school Y. What do you have? That bothers me more because I've never minded. Now, I will tell you, I come from the AAU basketball culture where I saw kids all the time. Hey, you're not playing me in AAU? You know what? I'm going to transfer and go play for that team over there. I'm going to get out of here. Now, if I don't like that team, I'm going to go play for that team. And they would go until they were finally the star of a team, and they'd kind of hurt their reputation. I think changes can be made to make the transfer portal better. Now, are they going to do it? Are they going to step up at some point? One of them, in my opinion, should be if you transfer. Of course, then we go back to the old school way of here's money under the table. But I quite frankly would like that more. But here's the thing: if you could tell a kid, hey, if you transfer, no NIL deals for your first year. And a matter of fact, I think that really should be the rule. You cannot get NIL money your freshman year. After your freshman year, because then we stop paying kids for things we don't know about. Why should Jaden Rashada have received a $12 million deal from Florida, even if they couldn't come up with the money? Why should that be promised? Why should the quarterback that just went to Tennessee, Nick Amalama, or however we pronounce it, why should he get $8 million as a high school prospect when you've got Joe Milton who just won a bowl game?
Yeah.
There's changes, I think, and I don't know if they'll come. Maybe they will. Right now, I think we're more worried about figuring out who's going to what conference.
Well, you're on to it, Will, because nobody that I deal with managing their wealth with private client group, what I do, they don't do that. And again, I don't know who these people are that are throwing this money out there, but you can have somebody with a $50 million account that's going to have a conniption fit over a $75 fee for something in their account. Okay. So to think that there are people out there that would write a check for $500,000 for a 17-year-old kid. I mean, I don't know. I don't know. I know a lot of people that have tremendous wealth. It's not them doing it.
It's people that want. I tell you, it's funny. It's funny. I watched yesterday, and
I don't know everybody. I don't mean to say that. Okay.
Well, what I was going to tell you is I had watched before, but I rewatched it yesterday, and I have not watched Pony Excess, the 30 for 30 on SMU. I had watched it prior to all this NIL transfer report. Rewatch that now. Rewatch it now and go, oh, I see what's going on, because what was it? Sherwood, so-and-so, whatever the guy's name was that stepped in and was the shady character who basically pretended to be the general manager, the owner of SMU football there at the end. Go back and watch Pony Excess now and be like, oh, I understand what's happening. There are boosters, and this was obviously the state of Texas, where at that time the SWAC, you had Texas winning and Houston and Baylor and so forth and so on. And those boosters, they had all that oil money, and they're like, you know what? I got all this money. I've conquered the business world. I've conquered the relationship world. I got a beautiful wife next to me. I got a beautiful girlfriend on the side. You get all these guys, and they go, you know what? I want to go to the bar and I want to brag to my buddies that my football team is beating theirs. And you know what? In the SEC in particular, that's exactly what it is. You got these executives, and they've conquered the business world, and they got the beautiful house and the kids and the cars. But it's no fun going to the bar when your buddy looks at you and goes, yeah, my Georgia Bulldogs just dragged your South Carolina Gamecocks 49-7 last year. What are you going to do about that? And so all of a sudden that guy goes, I'm going to write a check that's bigger, and we're going to go get that 5-star recruit.
Yeah, it is interesting. I mean, I remember in college when all that was going on at SMU, and I had a friend that played football, and he said on my recruiting visit, he goes, I can't even describe it. You're not going to believe me if I tell you, but the hot tubs it's just insanity that was going on. And then, we hear the story about, A&M gave Dickerson, Eric Dickerson, maroon Trans Am. I mean, if that's true,
gold.
Who knows if
gold.
it's true?
It was gold. I watched this yesterday. It was gold.
Okay.
And the funny part of that story is they give him the Trans Am, but Dickerson doesn't want to go there. If you go back and watch, he decides he don't want to go. He wants to go to either SMU, Oklahoma, or Southern Cal. His grandmother says, "Hey, I'm old. I can't fly. I can't really travel. If you will just please stay in state. If you will go somewhere in state." And he said, well, I like that guy at SMU. Let's go there. So they call up the boosters, and the boosters he goes, Coach, I got a problem. I got this gold Trans Am. And the SMU boosters go, don't worry. We'll take care of that. And they're like, hey, and the guy says, we paid for the car. We bought the car, and paid for it. It's funny how that stuff works.
It is. And you go back, look at the 30 for 30 Marcus Dupree. Oklahoma and Texas had two assistant coaches that rented out a hotel room in downtown Philadelphia, Mississippi, in Neshoba County. And Ole Miss and Mississippi State weren't even in the picture. I mean, I remember in high school being down at the beach down in Destin with all of our friends. We'd go to the beach with for a couple of weeks that were farmers in the Delta, Mississippi. And they were talking about Marcus Dupree, and I don't even know if they got a visit. But right. Willie Morris, the writer in residence at Ole Miss in Oxford, wrote that book, The Courtship of Marcus Dupree. And Marcus, I mean, I guess the people around him, Marcus is, from all accounts, from people I know that actually know him, is a hell of a guy. And just a tremendous talent. And golly, man, you come from small town, Philadelphia, Mississippi, Oklahoma. Wow. I mean, a guy that was that big and that fast. There's one documentary called The Best That Never Was. But that was a different era. But now you're right. You can't give this. I'd love to see if there's something in writing about Nico Lamaliva. $8 million. Nobody in their right mind will sis away $8 million. I don't care if they got $1 billion, especially if they're self-made. I mean, someone who just inherits a pile of money, they know they know the cost of everything, but they know the value of damn near nothing. Okay. You know, you're born on third base and think you hit a triple. I mean, they're the worst people. They don't pay their employees anything. They're cheap because they never struggled. But you get a self-made guy that's made that money, first generation wealth, because it typically works like this. The first generation employs, the second enjoys, and the third destroys, unless you make them work from the bottom up, cleaning toilets, sweeping floors, you know, make them earn respect. They don't put them on home plate if they hadn't got a hit. Yeah. There's your problem. And I'm going to tell you, you want to destroy a locker room, Will? You bring in a freshman with a big deal like Lamaliva. And Joe Milton, I mean, what does Joe Milton need to prove to people? What he did, they destroyed Clemson. I think he proved he can do the job.
We'll find out. We'll find out. By the way, just for the record, I don't know whether I'm ready to make it or not, but I am analyzing we've got to do an episode here on our show of bold predictions. And one of those might be that Texas San Antonio goes in and upsets Tennessee week 4, I think, September 23rd, I think, because Tennessee plays Florida the week prior and South Carolina the week after. And I guarantee that South Carolina game is going to be circled in Knoxville. And Texas San Antonio is a good little team. Jeff Traylor's doing a good job there, and they got Frank Harris back and stuff. But we'll talk about that when that time comes. But yeah, it's interesting, and we're continuing to learn about it. This is the beginning. We're taking the baby steps into this to see what happens in locker rooms and what happens with transfer portal and even taxes that you know about on these kind of high dollar figure contracts. So there's a lot still to be determined when it comes to transfer portal, NIL, and all that fun stuff.
Yeah, here's someone trying to argue with me that the hotel rooms rented by the Oklahoma and Texas coaches were in Wrightsville. No, that was in Philadelphia, Mississippi. That's a fact. But I think looking at the SEC this year, there are 4 teams they haven't even named a starting quarterback. Alabama, I think it's going to be Jalen Milroe from everything I'm hearing. Ole Miss, Jackson Dart was the starter last year, but I heard Spencer Sanders has a $300,000 or $350,000 NIL deal. If he's not the starter, and if you're the coach, you got to play it smart. You got to wait till classes start. You got to wait until it's too hard for him to enroll somewhere else. And Walker Howard, who was a 5-star out of Lafayette, Louisiana, whose dad, Jamie Howard, was a quarterback back in '94 for Curly Hallman at LSU. Missouri hadn't named a starter. A&M, Connor Wigman. I will say this. I'm going to predict Jimbo gives Bobby Petrino free reign, and they're going to be pretty damn good.
With that one, I
think he will.
I watched over the weekend Texas A&M lose to Appalachian State in one of those ESPN games that they're showing best of the season or best of 2022. And is the discipline. So you talk about NIL. Is the discipline in that program there to be good? You just said it. There's a lot of kids that went there that were born on third base. They didn't do anything in college football to earn that money, and they think they're studs. Is the discipline there to be that good?
I agree with you on that. Olin Buchanan, TextX.com. Olin's one of the best guys out there covering college football. And Olin said, even with the 30 guys that left after last season via the portal and just transferred, all over, 30 guys left. He said, even with that, you still would have had the number one recruiting class in the country, but not the number one of all time. But I'll say this, these kids that are showing up, they're showing up thinking they're owed something. They're a clubhouse culture cancer killer. They will kill your program. And
you got to have the coach that can. Nick Saban does it all the time. Alabama, Nick Saban does it all the time. And I'll say this: I'll give a lot of credit to John Calipari for knowing how to mold those guys. Now, it's not working out like Kentucky fans want in basketball, right? They're not winning championships. Nick Saban is. Kirby Smart's doing the same thing. Is Jimbo Fisher the disciplinarian?
No.
To rein these guys in like Kirby has done, like Nick has done, where those guys. That's the hard thing about college football, because you're right. You bring these guys in, you better be the disciplinarian. You better have the assistant coaches that are the disciplinarian to teach them and develop. Again, we go back to that word, because if you don't have that culture in there, you're right. These kids, you bring in the whole thing and they think, oh, I'm already good enough. Why is this awful junior who's making no money playing in front of me? That's where I think it gets out of control, and it's a locker room cancer. Yeah,
and I'll tell you, sadly, Terry Price, just a great man, died of cancer recently. On that A&M staff, he was at Auburn for 10 years, Ole Miss 4 years. He's an A&M grad. He's gone now. That was one of your disciplinarians. I don't think Jimbo is. I don't think he's that tough.
Yeah.
I look. You remember Jameis Winston at Florida State? Talk to anybody that was from Tallahassee. They'll tell you the truth on that one.
Yeah,
Guy should have never been playing college football.
Right. So that's the point. That's the point.
You bring up a damn good point. But I'll tell you one thing. You're the only person I know that knows about John Morant. Because tell me about that AAU team you had, Zion Williams and John Morant. How fun was that?
You don't want to go down that path with me right now, because I saw T. Morant put out, he was at a camp and said, and he blamed it on Ja. I like this. I like that over the week. You talk about deflecting blame. T. Morant's part of that entourage, and now T's like, hey, don't blame us. Ja makes his own decisions. Like, you got to be kidding me, man. Ridiculous.
Oh, my God. Well, the people in Memphis, he's going to miss 25 games this year. Yeah. He'll get 25 paychecks he will not get. And hey, by the way, I'd love to have this guy on the show, Allen Iverson, one of his entourage, somebody years ago set up something, I think with Nike, some balloon payment at 50 years old. He gets $50 million or something like that. That's a pretty smart guy.
I hadn't heard
that's kind of like an age band.
He was with Reebok, I thought, to start. I could be wrong.
Whoever he was with, but it's like a $50 million payment he's going to get when he turns 50. I think that's what I was told that by a guest on the show. And in my world, that's an age-banded trust. You'll see people have an age-banded trust. They don't get their money until they're 35 or 40. And that's when they start having kids. That's how it works.
Best story about John Morant. Not John Morant, I'm sorry, Allen Iverson, as he was driving down the streets of Philadelphia in a car, and he saw some kind of Lamborghini that he didn't have driving the other way. He stopped his car, got out of the car, went and paid the guy. It was something like $450,000 cash for the guy's car right there, and bought the guy's car on the streets of Philadelphia. I was talking to a guy who knew him pretty well. So that was what he did with his money. Just hop out, sees the car go by him, hops out, goes down, gives the guy cash. Guy gets out, calls a cab, and Iverson's driving his car the other way.
The closest I can come to that was one time in high school, my senior year. I was flying back from Philadelphia, and we were changing planes somewhere, and they offered us all like $500 if you would get off the plane because they were overbooked and needed you to catch the next flight. And I said, yeah, what the hell? And I got $500 and got a flight within an hour. It was not a bad gig. At least I didn't have to ride the Hound. Hey, Will, I know you got a big day ahead of you down there in Columbia. ESPN 107.5, The Game in the afternoons. You got a great team. I saw y'all at Media Days. Let people know how they can follow you, keep up with you, and look forward to having you on again next week. Great stuff as always.
Yeah, we're growing drastically. I'm in Columbia, but we'll be on in Florence and Myrtle Beach, so we'll have most of the state covered starting next Monday. But you can follow me on Twitter at Will, just like it's spelled there, at Will Gunter. I've got a new streaming television show that we're doing for Gamecocks Plus. If you go to GamecocksPlus.com, we started it tonight, or we started it last week, and we're doing it this week. So new television show as well, radio and television. So I got to go clean up the hair and shave to cut the television show today.
I think Doug Dean, AU Dose in Birmingham, has a question before you go. So hang on there.
Thank you, Will. Don't rush off if you don't have to. If you do,
yeah, don't. I'm not trying to run you off.
Hey, Will, I'm one of those awesome guys, but I really am not. I just don't. I'm getting old enough. I just don't have a lot of hate left in me. There are a few villains out there like Kirby Smart, but we just better because he keeps winning. But I'll tell you, I scanned Auburn's schedule, and consistent with what I hear from other people that talk about the Gamecocks this year and the great job that Shane Beamer's doing, I'm kind of relieved to not see South Carolina on Auburn's schedule this year.
South Carolina had not beaten them since 1933, and of all the people to do it, it's Will Muschamp. That was something, and then Shane gets him. I'll be honest with y'all. I have a relationship with Tank Bigsby. I'm about to hit him up for a Monday night football game. I got a buddy who wants some tickets on December 4th for Cincinnati and Jacksonville. And I've never seen a young man more upset on a 4th and 1 when Brian Harsin decides not only to not have him in the game, but then to throw a pass however many yards down the field that gets intercepted and completely changes that game 2 years ago, and really kind of sent Shane Beamer. If they don't win that game, they don't become bowl eligible. If they don't become bowl eligible the first year, who knows where we're sitting here today. That play, maybe one day we look back on as a play that really changed the course for Shane Beamer, because if Harsin just turns around on 4th and 1 and hands it to Tank, maybe he picks up the first down. Auburn goes down. I think they would have gone up 21-0. I think it was 14-0 if I remember correctly. It might have been 14-7, but it was a game, I will admit, I wanted to see on South Carolina's schedule because it's a close drive. It's fun going down there. I've had a lot of good times down there on the plains, except for when the game started. And I hope as we get into this new SEC, we see South Carolina Auburn a little bit more, because it's a game that I feel like has been underutilized in the SEC.
Yeah, I would welcome it. And, in the oddest of ways, you never pull for your team to lose, but a small assist for getting Potato Head out of Lee County, Alabama.
Is it true that he took a car that they gave him? I was told this story either at Media Day or in the last few weeks that he did not turn in his company car to Auburn, that he drove it to Boise, and Auburn had to send 2 staffers up there, and one of the staffers had to get the card. Is that a true story?
Yeah, I don't think that's urban legend. And, I'm not ready to call Harsin. He's got enough money. He should be able to buy a car like an Escalade, maybe not a Bentley. But I don't want to call him a car thief, but I think it was a profound misunderstanding of what the contractual terms were.
Okay, so that car did go back. So some poor Auburn staffer who gets paid probably $25,000 a year had to go to Boise, Idaho, and drive a car back from Boise, from what I understand, to Auburn.
Yeah, and I'll just tell, as every very high football IQ SEC fans know without my lecture, Auburn, more than once in our recent history, the modern era, we're a cautionary tale in how badly it can go if you get the head coaching hire wrong. And, and the difficulty is, and you're going to see some of these programs when, coaches retire or go on to the NFL or leave. There's some great coaches in the league right now, but you're going to see some mistakes made. And the reason is they're just not You give me your list. I bet you can't get to 4 or 5 so-called can't miss coaches that are gettable. I'm talking about not that they're out there like the Urban Meyer. I wouldn't hire him today, but they're not. Are they really gettable even at a program like Alabama? Because it's not going to be Kirby Smart. He's at his alma mater, and it's going to be dicey with the coaching changes going forward.
There's one, but I don't know if he would leave Washington. I'm a big Kalen DeBoer fan, but I don't know. If Texas A&M, we kind of talked about that. If A&M goes 5-7 this year, with that oil money, with Texas coming into the league now, they need to make a splash. I'm with you in terms of when you say gettable. That's a great word, a gettable coach. And Kalen DeBoer runs a great offense and is kind of a quarterback whisperer. I'm interested to see if he's from South Dakota. That's kind of his area. I'm interested to see if he plants roots in Washington now, going to the Big Ten and stays there.
I mean, I'd have Kyle Whittingham on my short list. He's just done amazing things at Utah. But then you ask yourself, does he really want to come beat the brutal deep South? I doubt it.
No. He's got the Big 12. He's got the Big 12. He can handle the Big 12. That's handled. That's easy.
Gunter, for you, Dash. Best of luck to the Gamecocks this year.
Y'all take care. Swamp Kings tonight. I don't know if y'all are going to watch that. Just over under 0.5. 4 episodes. If you haven't seen it. Does Tim Tebow say one curse word?
No.
All right. I don't know the answer to that. As I said today on the radio show, sidelines are testosterone laced. They're emotional. Does Tebow slip up, or do we hear a bunch of gosh darn it's, gee willikers?
Yeah, that's hard to say those words. I mean, and by the way, that's not fair to ever mic somebody up during a game, because we say things in the heat of passion. Look, that's just how it is, and you ought to go duck hunting with our group. God help you if you miss.
There's guns involved. People, I can handle words. Words never hurt me. Guns do.
The guys I hunt with are really good shots, and sometimes it's bad because ducks will come in. And you're like, okay, Neil's got him or Joel's got him, and then nobody shoots. You're like, and it gets crazy out there. That's why we don't drink when we hunt. Only after we've come back to the lodge and put our gear up. But no, great. Dave Baker says, "Go Cox." Want to say Caroline, his daughter, he was just over there. He's a member of the Cherry Farm Hunting Club. Just took Caroline over there to move in to her house in Columbia. She's a sophomore from Memphis. Took her on her first duck hunt, man. Great shot, by the way. But got some Gamecocks over here. And Dave on his truck has a big sticker back there.
Good.
Got another son, Michael's at Mississippi State. And so, so they look, man, we got the SEC all over the place. But look, great stuff as always. Have a great show. Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and say it. Tebow's going to drop a couple of bombs tonight.
We'll talk about it. Y'all take
All
care.
right, see you. Bye. Doug Dean on the clock. I love this stuff, man. Let's make some sense. I'll tell you what I saw. A pretty cool I sent you that chart, that blue chip deal. Yeah. Wow. Holy shnikes. That's on 3. And I met JD Piquel up at Media Days, talked to him a good bit, who's with On 3. Trying to get him on the show, but let me ask you this one, Doug. There are a lot of these. You've got Rivals, you've got 24/7, you got ESPN. Then there's a Consensus. One list I've seen has Auburn with 1 5-star, 8 4s, and 7 3s. Another one is 2 5s, 12 4s, and 2 3s. I like that one.
And I've got another topic. It's actually a new book that every sports fan, not just Auburn fans, will thank me that they take my advice on. I'll get that in a second. But the thing about 5 stars is in order for that to not get devalued, what I observe is that almost all of the rating services have roughly give or take a couple, a fixed number that they award that 5-star to. And so I think what it's done for me, for my money, and what you notice is if a player is at a skill position or even an O lineman that everybody's after, and he's what I call a high 4-star, like a 5.9 4-star, then he's knocking on the door of, for all practical purposes, you can consider that athlete a 5-star. And then what happens is if you see a player in camps or how he's doing his senior season in high school, if it's a high school guy, that if he blows up and suddenly his offer list reads like the top 10 or 15 in the final poll, then it's not really the work of these evaluators, which almost none of are actually former coaches or anything. They're just guys like you and I sitting behind a keyboard that obsess about football. They know a little, but they're going to be heavily influenced by the evaluations of actual coaching staffs. And you know what? I don't have a big problem with that. But I guess the point is, I think fans, maybe by a factor, Rob, of 20 or 30%, get too wound up about the difference between a high 4 and a 5-star. There's marketing value in it. You can create momentum for your program, but I can promise you, Auburn is no less excited to have the flip commitment from Alabama, or maybe it was Georgia, of DeMarcus
Riddick.
Thank you. Who is a high 4-star. You can find some services that call him a 5. I can promise you Hugh Freeze and Ron Roberts could care less what his star rating ends up being. The player probably cares because there's some ego involved with all that, but I think it's much ado about nothing. I will observe Auburn people naturally, because we're kind of we have a multiple personality disorder as Auburn fans. We experience the real highs of flipping DeMarcus Riddick and Perry Thompson from Georgia and Alabama, respectively. And we're not so good at dealing with the lows of Ole Miss saying, hey, we got to help Lane Kiffin. He's going to get pissed off and leave us. We've got to give him a win on a big in-state recruit. So kudos to Ole Miss. No bitterness here. That's recruiting of the great Kamarion Franklin, who may very well be the best defensive lineman on the whole board, no matter what team you're talking about. But it's not a sign. That's a commitment. Some of these kids, as the season progresses, will flip. And I'll tell you what, if I was Auburn, I would make sure Franklin knew that he was welcome to attend the Auburn-Ole Miss game, which is in Jordan-Hare Stadium, October 21. That would be a great opportunity to see if he doesn't have some residual flirtation left in him for the Auburn program. But I think he's going to go to Ole Miss. That's a lot of pressure from people all across your home state. You're bound to think about, how comfortable is my family going to be around Ole Miss people if I leave the state?
Yeah, and you could tell him a lot of things. Like no Auburn coach has ever survived losing to Ole Miss and Oxford to come back and coach the next year.
Huh?
Is it saying that the only time Ole Miss beats Auburn is when Auburn's no good? I mean, and Ole Miss, in their history, they did not beat Auburn in Auburn until 1999 in overtime, when Corey Peterson from Germantown High School caught that pass for Ole Miss, Tubbs' first year. They won in 2003, and it took hitting Ben Obamanu right in the breadbasket, and he dropped the ball. Then they had another try after that, but he didn't get it done. 2003, and then in 2015. It's an epic event when they win. I mean, Ole Miss in 134 years has beaten Auburn 11 times. You could say all that stuff, but you know what? It doesn't matter. This kid is a Mississippi kid from Lake Cormorant, 25 miles from Memphis, and that Grove Collective made him a priority. When I saw that crystal ball for Ole Miss coming in late, I know I kind of have a good idea of how important a guy like that is, like you do, Doug, for Ole Miss. Doug's in the witness protection program right now for a moment, getting back on the camera. But I was like, I felt like they're going to get him, and Ole Miss did. But look, Lane Kiffin is the Grove Collective made Kamarion Franklin a priority. I think they thought they had him. Then Auburn really worked hard. Auburn's going after everybody, which is what you got to do. I know that DeMarcus Riddick was a consensus 5-star when he was committed to Georgia, but suddenly, he's a 4. I mean, it's a joke when you think about the lack of objectivity of these rating services.
Yeah, and let me say this too, which I hope is, I wouldn't want it to be misconstrued by my Ole Miss brothers and sisters. It's really more of a compliment if you listen carefully. I think, I don't know this, I'm just speculating, but I suspect that the move, the bold and not inexpensive move, the Ole Miss collective made with NIL money that was part of the recruitment of Franklin, a great player, and it's a great pickup for them, because you win with defensive fronts more than any other roster. I think Georgia and Alabama have proven that in recent years. But I think this was, in many ways, Rob, this was about retention of Lane Kiffin longer term. He heard Lane be very outspoken, and which I admire, about the folly of NIL and how it's going to be the haves and have-nots, and that if the schools that have the donors are going to be the ones that are able to fund these collectives and year in, year out get enough 4 and 5 stars that they're always competing for the big prize. To which I say, has anything really changed in that regard? It's just that the money is more out in the open, if you will. As Lane himself has said, it's just that cheating is legalized now. And so, but nonetheless, he's sitting there and look at, the nature of NIL and the questionable funding or willingness to step up with NIL at a school like Ole Miss was a competitive disadvantage in recruiting for Kiffin. I think their brain trust said, look, we can't go buy with NIL 15 or 20 players. We're not Alabama or Georgia yet in terms of funding, but we better understand what the 5 or 6 serious priority studs are, and then let Lane work his magic in the transfer portal to augment that. And then you can be competitive, maybe not competitive at a Georgia, Alabama roster level, but top half of the SEC, which gets you in the game.
Yeah. I mean, and again, the state of Mississippi has a lot of talented players. And again, for Auburn to even be in the mix like they were for Camarion shows you how hard they're working in recruiting. Again, for 3 years, they weren't. It wasn't that the assistants weren't, but it's when your head coach is such a jerk and unavailable to visit with recruits on Sunday when they've been there for a weekend visit with their family. This is what you get. And so, look, Yancy Porter's going to be on with us here in a few minutes, Rebel Yell Hotline. And you're right, defensive linemen. And ironically, that AP All-American preseason team that was announced last night, not one defensive lineman from an SEC school was on that list, Doug. That's a shocker for what's considered to be the line of scrimmage league, the best one in all of college football.
Yeah, and you've heard of the phenomenon of recentness in psychology. Recentness in big-time recruiting can be 1 or 2 weeks. Jeffrey Lee at On3 Live, who's great in recruiting coverage, ranted beautifully Sunday night on their podcast about how what's going on with Auburn fans is they're mad as hell that Hugh Freeze didn't land Cam Franklin, and how quickly they forget they had just flipped Perry Thompson from Alabama. That's a player everybody wants. Demick from not Demick. I keep struggling with his name.
DeMarcus Riddick.
Thank you, Marcus Riddick.
It's a tricky name. It is.
I think I know a 5-star's name. From Georgia, held on and beat South Carolina in the 12th hour to hang on to Jalewis Solomon. And weeks prior to that, Auburn, Hugh Freeze flipped Joseph Phillips from Georgia.
Yeah.
So, I mean, where the hell's the gratitude? It's the highest of highs and lowest of lows. And, the funny thing is, none of us have the slightest idea how good any of these kids are going to be until they've been on campus a year or two.
Well, what you're saying is so true. At the level you have to compete for recruits that Georgia and Alabama are doing, you're gonna get mad. But that's when you start getting more of those type of players. Why is Auburn basketball better than it used to be? Because the fans get mad as hell after a loss. That's why. I mean, when they don't care, look, what kills a program more quickly than anything? Apathy. You know that. Doug, what's great about you is I can get a little emotional, a little frustrated. I can text you. Yeah, a little bit. But if I could text you during a game and you just calm me down, you know how to tell me, Rob, shut up. I mean, you've done that before. You'll go, calm down. But it's your job and the way you are. I love your personality because you'll just go, look at the big picture. And it's like when the market's down 1,000 points, what are you telling your clients? That's when I'm at my best. I thrive. I rise to the top under pressure. But then I get into recruiting and I get a little bit like, but I looked at the Cam Franklin thing and I know a lot of Ole Miss people, and I wanted to make this aware to everybody. They care too. They want to win too. And that's the number one player in the state of Mississippi. And you nailed it. How comfortable is my family going to be? I mean, I go there 3 or 4 years, even if I'm not All-American and I don't win the Outland Trophy, I graduate with my degree. I'm a rebel for life. Man, I'm networked in with some stout people because I know a lot of Ole Miss people. They're really good people, and they work. And that kid will be. He's got his NIL. Forget what he gets in college. It's the rest of his life.
Absolutely,
that's what we have to think about.
And Rob, while this is a good seg, or tell me if I'm doing this right with segues.
I love it.
We're talking about great players, the 5-star players, and for 30 plus years, we've seen a bunch of tremendous 5-star athletes come through the SEC and college football at large, and some of them really are legendary. But guess what? We still have yet to be graced with, and I'll borrow the title of Jeff Pearlman's new book that you absolutely must read, football fans, not just Auburn fans. The Last Folk Hero, Jeff Pearlman, who had a cup of coffee at Sports Illustrated and elsewhere. He's a tremendous writer. You boast about my writing, Rob. I'm not in the same league as Jeff Pearlman. And let me give you an address in once great, pristine Bessemer, Alabama. Now it's one of the second highest crime rates in the country. 612 Butler Avenue, where Florence Jackson, who would later be Florence Bond, had her 9th child, Vincent Edwards Jackson. And in this book, the point that Pearlman makes is in borrowing that title from Joe Posnowski, who called Bo Jackson the last folk hero, is that we hear things like Bo standing waist deep in a pool and jumping out of the water and onto the edge, the lip of the pool. I couldn't do that, Rob. I couldn't get out of the water, I don't think. We've seen him break splinter baseball bats over his knee. We've seen what he did to Bosworth at the goal line. We've seen him. We've heard stories at Auburn of him leaping, Rob, over a Volkswagen, a parked Volkswagen. And it gets to the point where, and by the way, he was on the plane with the Chicago White Sox on a 1991 flight that almost killed every member of the plane. They had an engine that was in flames, and Bo Jackson emerged from the cockpit. The pilots had let him ride with them for a little while, and Bo comes out calm. Hey, the crew knows what they're doing. Everybody calm down. So it gets to the point, Pearlman, it gets to the point where tell me any frigging Bo Jackson story, and I'm just going to assume it's true. Right, Rob?
Yeah. I mean, my freshman year, Sunday afternoon, I'm over there at a baseball game at Plainsman Park. Back then, it was like most baseball stadiums in the SEC, some bleacher seats and nothing special. I swear to you, I saw him hit a ball to the shortstop. The guy didn't even have the ball in his glove to throw it. And Bo had already blown past first base. And we were sitting there, 3 of us going like wow. And I still remember his first carry around left end against Wake Forest, 1982. 10 carries, 123 yards. 11-yard gain on first down. Also, I don't remember, I wasn't there, but the first pass from Pat Sullivan to Terry Beasley was about 15 yards past him over his head. The crowd gave a standing ovation. But Bo Jackson, Marcus Dupree, Herschel Walker, they're all track and field guys, and they were big. Man, you got a strong track and field state, you're going to have more guys like that. Now, I mean, Bo comes along almost never, but track and field, you're starting to see it making a comeback. And you're going to, I mean, Marcus, think about Marcus Dupree. What if he'd have played in an SEC school in a system with discipline there? I mean, how good, is he the best that never was? Is it Herschel? Is it Bo? That's a great debate to have.
Yeah, and I had a teammate of Bo's explain, which I'm sure you're familiar with. There was a practice session, and Coach Dye they were down at the goal line, and he instructed the defense to really overload the right side. And what he was trying to coach Bo to do was to be able to break 2, 3, 4 tackles at the goal line to score. And, Bo had the strength for that. Well, they were getting the best of him. 6 guys can tackle any of us, right?
Yeah.
Bo Jackson goes over to Coach Dye and says, I got a better way to do this. And what's that, Bo? Let me go over the top of that pile. And Dye said, what are we going to do? So the Bo over the top play itself was Bo Jackson's creation. Pat Dye saw that happen, and he said, man, we got something here. And so he just, and then he goes to the NFL draft or combine, runs a frigging 4.1340. And if somebody wants to question that clock, I have at it. But if it wasn't 4.13, it was 4.20, which I don't think anybody's run. And as Perlman writes, Bo Jackson isn't Jim Thorpe. He isn't Deion Sanders either. Nope. Bo Jackson is Paul Bunyan, folk legend.
But, Doug, you see this picture I'm pointing to behind me on the screen?
Yeah.
Okay. That crazy picture, that's a painting that my dad did. And look who that is going over the top. That's Bo. That's 1982 on a 2-point conversion in a 24-14 Auburn victory. That's when he first went Bo over the top. That's an idiot savant trivia question. When was the last time Bo over the top? The first time it was used, before it was used for a touchdown, the first time ever we remember was against Alabama.
Yeah, and Auburn had no business winning that 82 Iron Bowl. I think they had 150 yards of total offense.
It was not good.
They hung around. That's the dangerous thing when you. And a cautionary tale to the Alabama, Georgia, probably going to be Auburn because that running game that the stable of backs have got. I think Philip Montgomery will be too tempted to run a lot. The problem is you're going to probably be in some more games that are inside of 10 points, middle of the fourth quarter. And with these high-octane aerial attacks, there's risk involved. You could find yourself defending after they get an onside kick with a minute left and trying to keep somebody out of the end zone. But it's going to be fun to watch regardless. The other thing I'd say about this season that I think is going to just be fascinating is it's the last of the 4-team playoff, right? It's the last time that it's been the 1930s since we've had the opportunity to see if a team can three-peat. Actually, no, there have been others that had a chance. 2013 Alabama, that would have been a three-peat if they had won the Iron Bowl and gone on to win the national. There are probably others, but the point is it's very hard to do. Who besides Georgia and Alabama is set up to make some noise? I like LSU, but when I see Bobby Petrino down there at A&M, I'm with you. I'm skeptical. But there's a little voice in my head saying, be careful doubting what Petrino can do with an offense, which has been the biggest problem Jimbo has had down there.
Yeah, and I read some comments. Philip Marshall was on with us last week. His take on LSU is, look, they beat Alabama in overtime on a 2-point conversion. But they also got curb stomped at home by Tennessee. And they lost to an A&M team that had lost 5 or 6 in a row, got trounced in College Station. So everybody's picking LSU. Now, again, you have to say, if they're 11-1 if they go take care of business in the regular season against they had 2 losses. That was their 3rd loss. They finished 3, won the bowl game. They're 10-3, but they lost to Florida State by 1 point. But they got killed at home by Tennessee and on the road against A&M. Everybody's in love with LSU. It's a tough call.
Oh, here's another tidbit. I'm just hanging it. Was it Clyde Bolton maybe or Al Van Hoos at the Birmingham News years ago liked to say on Friday they forgotten what all they didn't have a theme to write about, so he called it hanging the laundry out. And it's this potpourri of data points. Here's one for you, Rob, that I don't think is I think is pretty much public information. The Auburn On to Victory Collective, NIL Collective. Wrap your brain around this. The word is it was $19 million was raised last year.
Yeah.
Here's the shocker. 95% of it was funded by 17 people. 56% of that 19 million was from 7 people total.
Yeah.
So we got some people who have been blessed and successful in life that love Auburn and want to succeed. And then dig this, 32% of it was from just 2 people. So we have an unsustainable funding model.
Yeah.
And I think the fascinating marketing, I call it a marketing problem.
Yeah.
How can programs that have the fan base, which is half to 2/3 of the SEC on some level, how can they engage fans? How can they reimagine season ticket models like Tigers Unlimited and Tide Pride? Reimagine that. And I'll give you a bogey on this. If you, not that it's easy, but if you marketed successfully and there were incentives and inducements, packages, you get priority seating for if you contribute to a collective, if they could clean up that legality with NCAA. If you had 100,000 fans,
I saw that,
commit to only $20 each, that's $24 million a year, which I think is sustainable. Realistically, maybe you only get to 40 or 50,000 fans that commit to that. That's still 12 million.
Yeah. Well, that's a populist movement. I think that would work. Let me say something real quick about one of our sponsors, rumbleboxinggym.com, 1835 Union Avenue, Midtown Memphis, right on the corner of Union and McLean, across from Walgreens. Open every day of the week. Check them out. Their hyperlink is on our website, sidelines.live. Go there. You can click in. You can find the class schedules, the rates, the memberships. They have student discounts for college students at Rhodes, Memphis, CBU, wherever. Let me tell you what it is. 45-minute classes, 15 3-minute rounds of dynamic plyometric exercise. Just dips, planks, push-ups, burpees, star jacks, push-ups, crunches, dumbbell work. Then you go hit those bags, 250-pound bags that hang from the ceiling. They look like teardrops or Hershey's Kisses. Great workout. Open every day of the week, rumbleboxinggym.com. I suggest if you want to get in the best shape of your life, join now. That's Ann Campley, the first of 3 locations. Take a quick minute break. We'll be right back with Doug Dean and hopefully Yancy Porter from Ole Miss. He may have been heard us talking about the Rebels and may have said, I'm not going to listen to that. I want to hear him talk about it. We'll be right. We'll be right back.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House Equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
You think about, Doug, what we're talking about with all the the NIL money that's being raised out there. 19 million, that isn't sustainable when most of it's about 25 or 30 people. Again, working on fundraising campaigns, 95% of the people I remember asking had never been asked before. And I like what you talk about, 60,000 people giving $100 a year, or 100,000 giving $20 or whatever it is. You need a populist movement, because I've always said this,
Rob, an endowment model would be beautiful.
Yeah. And our shareholders, you had 90,000 people in Jordan-Hare, 105 at Neyland Stadium. If every one of those people, who knows, they may start taking a percentage of every ticket sold and automatically putting that into an NIL fund. Think about that. You sell 75 or 80,000 season tickets, and $10 or $20 from every ticket goes toward NIL. That would be a huge. I mean, 80,000 season tickets. You take $20 from every one of those, or $30 from each ticket to each game, then it really starts adding up. But how far do we want to take this NIL? I mean, you're talking about boxing type numbers, where somebody for a fight gets a ridiculous amount of money. You've got to be careful. Let's say you got 40 or 50 million built up in your NIL fund. What are you going to do with 40 or 50 million dollars? Then it gets to be, you're talking borderline. You're talking borderline insanity if you get 40 or 50 million built up in an NIL collective. Because then all you're going to have is a roster full of guys that got paid to come there that don't really care that much about being there. We got to be very careful.
Gone.
Yeah. Well, that would be terrible if we had that problem. Because how much money again, Doug just laid out those numbers. 56% are paying for this much, and another. I mean, how much are people willing to fork over on NIL? Again, somebody that's worth $100 million, if they are first generation wealth and they worked up from the bottom to make that money, they're probably the best boss you've ever had, because they'll pay you well. They'll give you a raise. You get somebody that inherits a pile of money from a trust fund that's never worked for it in their lives, they're usually some of the worst bosses you'll ever see, because they've never struggled in their lives, and they're cheap. They don't value, they know the cost of everything and the value of nothing. That's where we got to be careful with NIL. You've got to value every employee. And I know people that are in key positions of big organizations, and they make sure and talk to everybody on their staff at some point every day. They send birthday cards. They personally sign things. That's NIL. If you're just throwing money at people and they don't really love the school, you're not going to get the return on investment that you would hope for.
There's no question. And sorry if I lost audio there for a second.
Man, we got to be not talking about Kamari and Franklin, man. I can't even get Yancy now.
I know I scared Yancy up. No, he needs to come on and gloat about the big recruiting victory, which was indeed a big one. So I'm going to leave NIL for a second. And it just dawned on me that in talking about Perlman's biography on Bo Jackson. If ever there was a player and a head coach that were a perfect fit, Rob, Pat Dye and Bo Jackson, because Pat Dye grew up a absolutely brutal childhood, and it's just the world they lived in and farming. Was it Blythe, Georgia?
Blythe, Georgia.
Yeah, and Coach Dye in multiple different sources. My favorite is a podcast you can find at the official Auburn website if you dig enough. Talks about how rough that childhood was, but even Dye's childhood, probably even Coach Dye, if he were here, would say still doesn't compare to what Vincent Bo Jackson went through growing up. Just completely brutal way of life. You know, that Bo talks about in this book how they ate a lot, almost every day, wild game, because that's what they had to eat. His grandfather would leave with a shotgun in the morning, come back with another wild game, and of course, very physical discipline growing up, and you know, and it's well documented his severe stutter that caused him to be, you know, ridiculed by kids, and he would then look for them after school to whip their tail. So I don't think we so much live in a world that you could manufacture or raise or grow a Bo Jackson quite as easily now, and probably not even a Coach Pat Dye, because we've worked hard, I guess, to our credit, to eradicate that kind of brutal growing up for young people.
Yeah. Well, and again, you know, the thing I always say, first generation employs, second enjoys, third destroys. There are people that have inherited money that have a big heart, that are wonderful. They're great people to work for, but most of them aren't. Most people that did not work for the money don't know the struggles that people go through. And Yancy Porter's on with us right now. Yancy, we were talking about Kamari and Franklin. And, you know, I saw Ole Miss late with a crystal ball to get him. And I was like, they'll probably get him because Ole Miss, this is the number one kid in the state of Mississippi. Lake Cormorant, 25 miles from Memphis. I was with some Ole Miss friends on a fishing trip this weekend. And by the way, Doug, we caught 209 rainbow troutses at Troutapalooza. And some of the guys were Otis Campbell, unable to fish. They were not able to that much, but you know, that's a big get for Ole Miss. Let's talk about the significance of getting the number one player in Mississippi, Kamari and Franklin, Yancy, and what that means for other kids in Mississippi on the recruiting trail, because that's a huge get. And Auburn people mad as hell, but who knows? They never had him to begin with. You know?
Congrats to Hotty Toddy.
Yeah, you know, I saw that some Auburn people were upset about it, but look, I mean, could Ole Miss fans be upset if they didn't get the number one player out of Alabama that was located 48 miles from Auburn? You know,
that's my point.
It's you know,
it's the off season, man.
It's the off season, exactly. But the significance for Ole Miss is that now they've locked up the top 4 defensive linemen in the state of Mississippi. And as we all know, you know, they're really hard to get. There's not a ton of great defensive linemen out there like there are wide receivers and defensive backs. So, yeah, it was definitely a big get for Ole Miss. Also, this is the 4th year in a row with Lane since he's been here now that they've gotten the top 2 prospects in the state of Mississippi. So he's trying to set a trend that he's going to get the very best out of Mississippi.
Hey, yeah. Yancy, I won't stay on the whole time. Good to see you, Yancy. And as far as I'm concerned, they played hardball to win that recruiting battle. I think Franklin liked Auburn a lot, but I'm with you.
Yeah.
If you go to recruiting and NIL, you should have the upper hand to sell a kid on not forgetting his home state. And Ole Miss with Lane Kiffin has its own appeal for sure. My question to you, Yancy, is: am I unfair in speculating, and this is pure speculation, that there was an aspect to this as it relates to the NIL collective that had to do with keeping your head coach engaged and happy that he's getting the air support, if you will, to borrow a military metaphor, to be competitive on enough big-time recruits that he feels like he's got a puncher's chance in the SEC?
Yeah, I mean, we all know that there's been some criticism with Lane about his recruiting on the high school front. So it was, you know, Lane's going to have to at least keep the top players in Mississippi here at Ole Miss to have a puncher's chance, as you call it.
Yeah.
So yeah, there was a lot of pressure, I'm sure, to land him with Kim, but to be
Yancy.
I think Jeremy Garrett at Auburn did an outstanding job with him there, the defensive line coach, and so I think Auburn did a fantastic job. I just think it's simply the hometown cooking. Look, both coaches there, that his position coach and head coach at Lake Cormorant, both went to Ole Miss as well, played ball at Ole Miss. So
yeah,
there was also some influences there as well.
There you
well,
go.
Yeah,
He's a good.
Yeah, he is a good. And Yancy, I've met Johnny Jones several times out at MUS. South Panola guy from Batesville. We know there's some huge Ole Miss fans over in Batesville, a lot of them. And Johnny coaches up at MUS, played for Tuberville, great linebacker. Those Mississippi guys, I mean, there is tremendous pressure to stay home. There's a ton of talent in that state. And even, Doug, I'll admit, and I think you might agree, even if Auburn would have gotten a commitment from Kamari and Franklin, I don't think you sleep too easy on that one because, again, he's in Mississippi. And, I mean, you're right, Yancy. But you know what? I want to talk now about the quarterback room.
Yeah.
Spencer Sanders, Walker Howard, Jackson Dart. That's where Lane Kiffin excels. And don't people, I hope you heard what Yancy said. Ole Miss has locked up the top 4 defensive linemen in Mississippi for this year. Don't underestimate how big a deal that is. That's like Mildred saying she'll be wearing a 2-piece at the beach. That's big news.
Yeah, and the reason it's big news is because this year is such a unique class in Mississippi. There's so many good players in the state this year, and so many good defensive linemen. Usually you have one legit guy, one project, and the rest are just guys that are going to go to maybe group of 5 schools. But this year Mississippi had 4 or 5 legitimate defensive linemen, and they've got about 18 legitimate prospects this year that anybody in the country wants. So it's a deep class. We see this about every 4 or 5 recruiting years. Classes, that Mississippi will be very deep, as it happens with all the states, Alabama, Louisiana, and this is one of those deep classes. So there's been a lot of pressure, a lot of hype built around this 24 class.
And Yancy stating the obvious. When you say that Ole Miss has wrapped up the top 4 in-state D linemen, the most imminent worry, the biggest imminent threat is your in-state rival. Mississippi State fans got to be a little bothered and worried about that.
Well, certainly, because there's been a trend in Mississippi for quite a while now, for several years, is that Ole Miss is going to get the skill players and Mississippi State's going to get the defensive linemen out of the state of Mississippi. You look back at the Fletcher Cox's and Simmons over there that plays for the Titans right now. There's several players you could go. The trend is that for the most part, and Ole Miss still gets some good defensive linemen that make it to the NFL. Benito Jones. We could go on down the line. There's a few too, but State has really done a good job of building that reputation of being the school. If you're a defensive lineman you want to go to, and Ole Miss has done a good job. If you know a wide receiver and things of those natures. So Ole Miss needed to reverse that trend, and they are certainly doing so this year.
Well, you look in the quarterback room. Let's talk about it. Spencer Sanders, 41 starts for the Mullet at Oklahoma State. Hell of a quarterback. I'm sure he's got a nice NIL deal. Walker Howard, Jackson Dart. Why is the competition that fierce, or is Kiffin doing what I think a lot of coaches are doing? Any coach would do it. Why not wait until classes start so these guys will stick around? Because you run that risk in today's world with guys bolting if they're not the starter to try to get on somewhere to be the starter before the season starts. But I think it's obvious to me Jackson Dart's going to be the starter. But you've forgotten more than I know about Ole Miss football.
There's no question this is Jackson Dart's team. He's going to be the starter, and that's that.
Okay, so maybe there's something to my theory that Doug and I were saying is keep them hanging around as long as you can so they don't get on the hound and take a Greyhound, to the next school down the road. That's what you don't want to happen.
Well, with Howard, he's already used his one-time transfer to go from LSU to Ole Miss, and as we know, Spencer from Oklahoma State to Ole Miss. You would think after 4 years he would be a graduate there at Oklahoma State, where he could be free to transfer again. But turns out he's not. He had to take a last-minute class just to stay eligible for next season. So he's not a graduate. So he doesn't have that freedom to transfer again, even if he wanted to, if he doesn't win the job. So
okay,
I think really the story of the camp though is not about Jackson Dart. Everybody kind of expected him to get that job, but it's this freshman Austin Simmons down there in Florida that jumped from 10th grade to a graduate. He just turned 17 years old, and I mean, you talking about this guy's going to be, he is something else. I can understand why Florida was so upset that Ole Miss flipped him now. He's got Heisman potential. I'll put it that way. He is going to be unbelievable.
Yes, one of the things. Sorry if I walked on it. One of the things Rob and I almost always guests have studied since it's August. Can't believe we're 9 or 10 days from the start of real football. I'm counting September 2nd. It's actually just a few days till some kind of football. But you study the schedule, and if Ole Miss fans and Lane Kiffin want to have a valid test of how much are you progressing, you got it, brother. Starting at Alabama September 23rd, followed by you host LSU. Then, as you know, you host Arkansas. Then you go back on the road to Jordan-Hare. I don't think you got to worry it quite as much about Auburn yet, but hopefully in a year or two. But that middle of the season is going to be a gauntlet, right?
Yeah, I mean, every schedule, strength of schedule that you see out there has Florida 1, Ole Miss 2. It's brutal. I mean, and before you go to Alabama, you got to play at Tulane, and Tulane returns their offense coordinator, head coach, and a 4-year starter at quarterback. And anytime you have that three combo there, you're dangerous. And we all saw how Tulane finished last year. So I mean, and you say at Auburn, like maybe in a year or two, Auburn will be an absolute dogfight war. Yeah. I guarantee it. I'm about to say Tommy Tuberville, but Hugh Freeze will have those guys ready to play. I know him personally. I know that he's been practicing for Ole Miss since the spring. That will be an absolute war. That game will be as hard as any game on the schedule. I don't care if it's at Alabama, at Georgia, anywhere. That is going to be a dogfight.
You're too good at this, Yancy. I thought maybe I could start and get one of their voices out of Oxford to drop their guard just a little bit. But no, you're too smart.
No, they know that. And people don't know is that Lane and Freeze are good friends off the field. When Freeze comes back home here to Mississippi, and he does quite often when the season's not a play, but the first thing they do is Lane and Freeze they go hang out, they go get dinner together. So it's going to be a fun game, and they both want to win that game equally as bad.
Yancy, we got a few minutes left. Yeah, Lane Kiffin and Doug pointed this out. This is one Kamari and Franklin they really needed to show Lane Kiffin, man, stay here. We can get you the players. I think Lane Kiffin, you and I talked about this, and Yancy did last year. I thought I wanted him to stay at Ole Miss because I thought he's a perfect fit, and I thought Freeze would be the perfect fit for Auburn. So it worked out for everybody. Talk about Lane Kiffin just day in and day out, having his family around. I saw him on SEC Network talking about taking 8 kids on a trip. I bet he couldn't wait to get back to coaching. Yet all these people out there criticize him because his hair is messy. So what? The guy's a genius. Remember what Einstein looked like? I mean, he doesn't look like Einstein, but Einstein had crazy hair.
I think Lane is trying to get his hair to look like that. I think he thinks it looks fashionable or something.
Einstein.
I don't think it's messed up. I think that's the way that
It
he's
looks
trying
good.
to fashion it.
Hey, man.
Look, Lane dances to his own beat. We all know that. I mean, he's in a good place though. Lane is. I'm proud of him. I mean, he's in a really good place personally with his life. He's really straightened some things out, and he's found the man above, and he's in a good spot compared to when he came to Ole Miss. He's really gotten himself in order, and spiritually, emotionally, with his kids, with his ex-wife, and I just think he's in a good spot right now.
Good.
Hey, Rob, I told you one of the podcasters from the left or the East Coast, the Silent Verbal. It's a fun podcast. They described Lane's look at SEC Media Days, which I love, is the disgraced Southern lawyer look.
Oh, God. Oh, my God. Hell, God bless, man. Oxford's a fun town. Start your morning off, breakfast at the Beacon, eat your lunch up on the square somewhere, maybe Proud Larry's. I think it's the perfect fit. It's the perfect marriage. Man, unfortunately, we have run out of time. Dadgummit. Wait, Doug, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say Lane Kiffin to me is one of you can rely on him adding fun to college football. And I for one, really appreciate that.
Yeah.
It was funny yesterday. Ole Miss had a big NIL fundraiser for their thing. They raised close to $2 million yesterday for the NIL fund, and they had like a telethon, right? You call in, and it was kind of a unique situation. But Lane was up there with it, and while he's up there talking about it, he's still going off about the portal and the NIL while he's trying to raise money for it. And he's like, "This is terrible for college football."
How much can I count on you for? I mean, it reminds
hilarious. It was him and Walker Jones doing the thing, and it was quite musical. Just listening to everything he was saying while he was trying to raise money for the NIL. He's going off about it in the portal still. It's just he doesn't like it.
Well, it just reminds me of that old televangelist, Dr. Gene Scott, that used to sit up there, and he had this horrible band that used to play, and they'd play a song, and he goes, "Whoo, that's awful." He goes, "We're going to play it again until I get $10,000 from my listeners, my viewers. Y'all better call right now. All right, boys, play it again." They go, "Oh, wonder so dearly, I saw the light." Go ahead, Doug.
I want to be Lane's speechwriter for just one line when he talks to the Grove Collective or whatever they're called. And it would go like this. These evils like 7 figures for Kamari and Franklin. We have got to put a stop to this. This is bad for college football.
We're going to play it again. Oh, I love it, man. Doug, you and I need to go over to Oxford and go out and have some road sodas with Yancy. Yancey is,
I'll pick
Oxford's an awesome town.
Yeah, I love it.
Hey, Yancy.
As my buddies have told me before, Rob, you've been to the rodeo plenty of times.
Yeah, it's a fun place, man.
Doug, y'all come on
stuff.
over. We'll show you a good time.
We will. I love Oxford. And Doug Dean, AU Dose in Birmingham, and Yancy, Rebel Yell Hotline. Catch them Monday nights, 6 to 7 p.m., Sports 56 WHBQ, and Super Talk Mississippi. And how can they follow y'all on the Twitter sphere?
Yancy, go.
Yancy Porter. Very simple.
And Yancy Porter.
I'm at an undisclosed location. I do not seek notoriety, Rob, only the Auburn family's attention.
There we go, man.
I love it.
Hey, most
y'all
often we see the face of Christ in the least among us. We live in the greatest country in the history of the world. We have the best guests like Doug, like Yancy, and like Ben Troupe briefly before his thing went out. And Will Gunter. But we'll be back tomorrow. Until then, have a great day. Help somebody out. We're out of here. See you then. All righty.